Hello Scott, how are you?
I'm well.
That's good. Well, welcome to this, the next one in the series of interviews with RP ministers in Canada. Can you give us a wee bit about your background, where you're from, where you grew up, what your family was like?
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, to Canadian parents and having Canadian siblings. So I was the only American born in our house.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's right. So I have a brother and 3 sisters, and I'm the youngest. And then we lived in Ohio. My family lived in Ohio until I was 7 years old, and then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona. And I stayed there until seminary, and that's when I moved out then to Pittsburgh to begin seminary training. And then in 2001 is when we were called to serve here in Kitchener.
Okay. Was that a Christian home you were brought up in?
No, it was my father, I would say basically was an atheist. My mother was a Jehovah's Witness. And my mother comes from generations of Jehovah's Witness.
Right.
So actually I found it quite interesting. Her grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness, and then her mother was a Jehovah's Witness. And that means then that her grandmother most likely would have been way back in the Taze Russell times,
Wow.
the original group. So we were in the Jehovah's Witness, or I should say my mother was in the Jehovah's Witnesses until 1975. And you know the reason why 1975?
No.
Because stay alive until 75. That was the prediction of the end of the world.
Right.
And we used to go to conventions, and the last big convention was in 1974, and we attended that. And then, of course, the world didn't end in 1975, and my mother then stopped attending at that point.
Wow.
And then I found out later, actually, at her funeral service, that because another lady from the Jehovah's Witness congregation came and said, I was at the Kingdom Hall with your mother. And I asked her about that when she left, and she said, yeah, she was disfellowshipped. And the woman said, and I was disfellowshipped as well after that. So anyway, we were part of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't remember much of that except one time being asked to read the Bible, or their New World Translation, during one of their services one evening. And I would have been in grade 5 when I did that. And I can remember as well sitting in the Kingdom Hall and drawing pictures at my mother's feet. And occasionally going out for services, going door to door. And the only thing I liked about going out to services was that when we were done doing that, going door to door, then my mother would take us to Woolworth, I think is the store, and I could get something in the toy department. So that was what I was encouraged in. But after we left the Jehovah's Witnesses, then we went completely just a secular family. Started celebrating Christmas, and there was never anything mentioned about religion in our house at all.
Right.
So I always had a curiosity about the meaning of life and where the world came from, and I absorbed completely evolution and just a materialistic view of the world.
Mindset.
Yeah. So during high school, my hero was Carl Sagan, and his television series Cosmos was my favorite show. And so he was really my prophet, and that's how I viewed the world.
So then, what happened in terms of the reality of Christ coming into your life?
That didn't really take place until university. And so the path to university was somewhat interesting. When John Lennon of the Beatles was assassinated, that was a big turning point in my life. When that took place, my older brother Cameron began buying a bunch of Beatle albums because John Lennon was assassinated, and I became a Beatle fan.
Seriously?
Yeah, listened to all the music, and I did, and then I decided that I wanted to learn how to play guitar, and so I started taking lessons, guitar lessons at a mall, and I saw at the music store a local band had showed up at the mall. These 4 guys, and they set up all their equipment in the mall, and they started playing a set of music, and I was absolutely enthralled by seeing this group of 4 guys putting out so much music, sounding just like a record, and I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. And so I continued taking guitar lessons, and then by my senior year in high school I was involved in a band that was made up of guys who were in their late 20s, and here I was 17 years old and going into nightclubs and playing music, and then looking for other bands and so on to be part of. And anyway, I ended up involved in a local band in Arizona, and we came very close to getting a record contract and making it big, so to speak. But before that happened, or when that didn't happen, I decided that I need a fallback career, so I better go to university. So I started attending university, and while I was there, there were some Christians there that seemed very different from me. I'd never seen people like this. They seemed...
What was striking about them? Can you remember?
Modesty in dress.
Okay.
And just mannerisms. You hear the proverbial, there's something about them that they have that, what is it? I don't know what it was. It was just this drawn toward this individual, this curious individual, the way that they lived and conducted themselves. It was so different from other people, and myself in particular. So 2 of the classes that I enrolled in during one semester, one was a philosophy class and the other was a world religion class, both of which were taught by the same professor. And this professor was an Indian man. Actually, he was a former elder at the RP church in Phoenix at that time. That's a whole nother story. But I didn't know that at the time. And the first day of class, this other Christian was sitting next to me in the desk, at their desk, and I knew that this individual was a Christian. And the first day of class, the professor said, in this course on philosophy, we're going to be examining some of our most basic beliefs. And for some of you who have been raised believing certain things, you may feel that throughout this course that your beliefs that you have been raised with are being torn away from you, and you're going to be clinging to the desk, as your beliefs are being pulled away from you. And I was in my heart wringing my hands thinking this Christian is going to have their beliefs taken away from them. And he was really speaking of me. That's what ended up happening to me. So during that semester, I was slowly being challenged through basically what was an apologetics class, indicating that, that God exists. And at the same time, this Christian had presented me with the Bible. And we made an agreement. I gave her a copy of Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and she gave me a Bible. And I started reading the Bible, and I remember I started at Matthew, and I was reading in the Sermon on the Mount, and it was just coinciding with what I was listening to in this philosophy class.
Yeah.
But the authority of Christ's word and his speaking, where the crowd was struck with the authority with which you speak, I had that sense as well.
Yeah.
So this reading of the Bible then. It took place over a summer. And at one point in the summer, my parents needed their carpet. They were going to get a new carpet for their house. And so I called the band and our manager over and said, we'll have a carpet rolling party. And we'll roll up the carpet and throw it out. So while we're there, we start talking about meaning of life in Christianity. And we get talking, and of course the other members of the band, the bass player, his father was a Baptist minister, and so he claimed to be a Christian at the time. The other guys were pretty much just, worldly young men. And I find myself debating with them. They all kind of went home except for the manager. And we ended up talking till 3 o'clock in the morning. But around that time, right before he left, I had realized that I had crossed over from, talking about it in an interested way at the beginning of the evening to this is really what I believe. And he went home, and I remember going in my bedroom and just breaking down and weeping and asking God to save him.
It's tremendous that there you were trying to process it through a conversation, and Christ used that to bring you to understanding. The power of His Word.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing when God changes our lives. Remarkable.
Yeah, and that I think as well. The next day, actually, we had a dinner. The band all went out for a dinner, and we were in the midst of recording our second album. And right in the middle of it, and I said, I need to quit. I gotta quit. And I said, this has been my God, and I can't do it. The bass player, who was professing to be a Christian, but at the time he certainly wasn't walking with the Lord, and he said, you can be a Christian and still continue to do this. And I said, no, I can't. I know I can't. And the other fellow in the band, who was my best friend since grade 4, he said, after a long period of time, he said, I understand that, Scott, and that's right. If you have to do that, then I think that you have to do that.
It just speaks, doesn't it, to the power of God. It not only changes the heart, changes the mind, changes the whole desire, changes, and that's when you know it's real.
Yeah.
That work of the Spirit and regeneration and renewal does bring instant sanctification to a degree, which then in progressive sanctification works out the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly true. That is certainly true. And I thought too, very early on, now I'm kind of putting words on what actually happened from today's perspective back then. I probably wasn't, thinking it this way, but I knew what I wanted to do is just devote my whole life to telling people about Christ and about that this is the truth, because I was so bound up into atheism and or agnosticism, depending on how inebriated I was.
Yeah.
When I was sober, I was a total atheist. When I was inebriated, I was agnostic. But
well, that's it's a great start. Wonderful start. A guy who was a 4th generation Jehovah's Witness potentially, calling by the grace of God to believe in the Lord Jesus. I'm looking forward to the next time we talk about that telling forth of the gospel. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.